Game loaded.
Hi, and welcome to an edition of Lessons Learned with your host, Rafael Pinheiro. I hope you like the new intro. I've been working on it for a couple of days now. It isn't that much of a change, I know, but hopefully it will give the videos a little more character. Can't go back and put that intro on the older videos because that's not how it works with YouTube, sadly enough. But hopefully, again, that's another sign that the channel is improving bit by bit. Now, onto the program. Now, I have this idea for a game. I've talked about things I like to see in video games in the past, and I like to call this the wish list, right? Things I like to see in video games. Sort of a thought experiment, if you will. This time around, I like to think of an entire new game, right? Called Adventurer, which is slightly based on a series that I'm writing on my blog, a serialized fiction. It's free. You can go there. I put the link on description below, and you can read it out and see what you like. But the idea is that the character is playing in a Western RPG-like game. Probably not even a Western RPG. It would be more like a brawler. Kind of like the old D&D arcade games by Capcom or similar games. But this time around, the character is like, how can I put this? The character is a nondescript character. Kind of like Samus Aran in Metroid, an original Metroid, wearing a nondescript armor from head to toe. And you don't know anything about the character. The character is a true Western PC type character, a complete cipher. There's no character creation phase in the beginning of the game. And there's no voiceover, no voice acting. Everything is by text. In fact, it will be sort of a retro game. Will be probably 16-bit as well to make sure that, the most of the energy goes into the combat and the story. And what is the story? Well, the story is very simple. This adventurer is just, at least starting out, to be someone who basically kills monsters and saves people using a variety of combat techniques, either two weapons, weapon and shield, or a two-handed weapon, and perhaps weapon and magic, right? That's sort of the basics or the mechanics of the game. But there's another mechanic. As the adventurer, as this nondescript adventurer, probably in full battle armor, probably black or any other monochrome, a primary color, goes around the universe, the overworld, they talk to people and they interact with people. And when they interact with people, player gets to make choices about the character's name, sex, gender, age, ethnicity, sexual identity, gender identity, and race. The thing about it is, in this particular game, we don't know anything about the main character. Everything that can be defined about the character will be defined by the player as they play the game. That becomes part of the game mechanics, if you will. Making decisions when you hear stories from different bards in an inn, or you speak to an NPC and it's going to give you a mission or something like that about not only what you're going to do in the future, right? Sort of like decisions where you help or hinder different people, whether you're good or bad. Sort of the whole thing with morality in the game, but also whether or not you have siblings or parents and what's your nature. You're an orphan, etc., etc. And as you make those decisions, you open up side quests to deal with those situations, right? The main plot basically is around this evil overlord who wants to conquer the land, and you as the upcoming adventurer either is a possible ally or enemy. Depending how you act in the game, the overlord might decide, well, I'm going to try to kill this person, or I might recruit them. And then you have choices such as, typically defeating the overlord and saving the world from this menace, joining the overlord, or becoming the new overlord, right? But that is a background plot, even an excuse plot, because the real plot and the real story of the game, and even different aspects of the setting and the characters, are all decided by the player. Where they go, how they do things, in what order they do them, and what choices, dialogue choices they make as they encounter other people, create the story. Also includes romance as well. Will be a big part of it. But again, it won't be the sort of James Bonding that we've seen in BioWare games. Instead, you're going to have a host of characters which run the gamut of the LGBT spectrum, right? But also run the gamut of being people who may be attracted to you romantically, platonically, people who are seeking companionship, and not even in a romantic way, but as friends, people who are seeking a sense of family, people who might fall in love with you, but the character might not feel the same, and vice versa. Maybe the character expresses romantic or filial or different types of bonds with different people, and might be rejected, right? In that way, it creates a certain dynamic that the character defines himself and his companions by these relationships. And you have the whole gamut, right? You don't simply have, oh, these characters exist merely to satisfy my, or the characters, and the player characters really, sexual or romantic aspect of the power fantasy, right? They're not there just for the sex or for the romance. They can be, some of them might be, but not all of them. And they react to the character at different points when they meet them and how these characters act in the overworld. Some people will adore the hero because they're acting very heroically, or be attracted to them because they show power, etc. But then when they see the real hero in action, we're like, this person might not be good for me for whatever reason, and on and on and on. And why do this? Why have a complete cipher that becomes sort of fill in the blank for the player? Well, first of all, in the area of diversity, it allows the player to craft their character in basically one of two ways. Either become a representation of themselves in the world, whoever the player happens to be, or an idealized form of what they want to be in the game, or a little bit of both, right? So it solves the problem of having a diverse cast, especially the player character be part of a diverse cast, because the game doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't impose upon the player a sex, a gender, an age, etc. like that. It just leaves the options open to the player. It offers options to the player. And also, it's a matter of representation and having diversity, and also having a diverse cast as well that reacts with or to the player also helps in that regard. Second, having the narrative basically up to the player in such a way, it's something that a lot of designers, they won't want to do that. But I think it really shows the strengths of video games that show that they're not movies. It's not someone else's story to tell. It's the player who gets to tell their own story. Because at the end of the game, what you end up with is basically, the character has a final screen, takes off their helmet, whatever, and we see the character. And we have a sort of a rundown of what the things they did and who they were with and how they see themselves. See, it's not about someone else telling you this is a story. It's about their story, the player character story, the player story. And also binds the narrative to the game mechanics by making the creation of the narrative a game mechanic. Yes, we've seen this before, but I don't think we have seen it to the extent that Adventurer in this hypothetical game would present to us. And finally, I think it would just be fun because it maximizes player agency, and in doing so, it strengthens the illusion of control, which I always believe is the central tenet of video games. So for all those reasons, I think that this would be a fascinating exercise, and I think a good game if we can pull up the challenges and the combination of narrative choice and game mechanics, and a world that has enough of them to make them interesting and attractive, a wide diversity of players, right? It'll basically have a little bit of everything because it's up to the player to decide what they want to be. Well, that's my grand idea, of course. I'm sure that a lot of people can bring a lot of examples of how some things have been done before in JRPGs and Western RPGs and many other games. I welcome them, as always. If you like this or any of the videos on my channel, please comment and subscribe, and I'll see you when I see you. Good night.